a video production company, but more so we're actually like a collective of directors and cinematographers and people like yourself that are coming up into the space. If you can just do it all, you're gonna make all this money. And I didn't realize that that's actually the biggest detriment to like everyone's business. Even to this day, it's like if you don't have enough people to work with or people to surround yourself that are stronger than you in certain certain areas, you just shoot yourself in the foot.
That's when it like really clicked. Like, you gotta have like the right team for people to like fill in the weaknesses.
And this was really the basis of like our entire business model and how we kind of grew from there. But all to say that by the end of that first year, I wanted to quit. Like, it was just not a great year. Hey everyone, welcome to Unfold, a podcast by Tenfold Production. We'll be breaking down everything from the business to the behind the scenes of the production world. I'm Jason, and today I'm joined by
Juanjo. Nice to meet you guys. I'll be hosting this podcast with Jason. I work here at Tenfold, and honestly, I have a million different questions for Jason. So let's just get right into it. I think the first question that we should address is, what is Tenfold?
Yeah, we're a video production company, but more so we're actually like a collective of directors and cinematographers and people like yourself that are coming up into the space. And we're really just here to create this new found space of cinematography and directing that's a little bit more new age. I think there's like an old school industry and space of it that's kind of transitioning into something that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more nimble, and still executing at a really high level. And so that's kind of the space we're trying to build ourselves, and more so as well, we're trying to re-educate and not re-educate, but we're trying to educate this kind of new generation that we were in as well. When we first started, we were all single individual cinematographers, directors. Back then we were just all videographers. And so we all picked up a camera, didn't really have much experience, and we just learned off of YouTube. And so now we're trying to rebuild into this YouTube space and give back to the people that are kind of coming up now and hoping to get to where we are. Because we still have a lot to go as well, but ultimately I think there's all these gaps that we can help provide assistance in.
Cool. And then like, what is your role within this company?
Yeah, so I kind of play more of like a CEO kind of business development space as well as directing. I only got into directing in the beginning because to me it was a space that I needed to get into so we can kind of keep pushing things forward. But as we kind of settle into the business a bit more now, I focus more on the large picture, big picture of where we're going and kind of how we're building out this business as well.
And then like on a directing stance, like what do you prefer doing?
Yeah, my big thing is fashion. I think it took me a while to get to this place of understanding that fashion is what I need to do. I think in the beginning, everyone kind of needs to try a bit of everything. And it took me a while to realize that fashion is something that I'm actually passionate about. I could spend a lot of time thinking about it because I just spent so much time growing up in this space that naturally that now I'm in this kind of place where I can create visions and build out stories. That's where I typically lean back into.
Okay, cool. I think a big question that is pretty instrumental in getting us to where we are today. Did you go to film school for this?
No, so I didn't go to film school. I actually went to York University kinesiology. My counselor told me, like my guidance counselor told me, I like sports, and that's why I told them. And they're just like, go into kinesiology. That's like a perfect path for you.
Yeah.
I think when I was 17 or 18, I had kind of no path. I was just kind of going to school, doing the motions, and I didn't really have anything that I was really gravitated towards. I didn't really do anything creative in school in terms of like the classes I wanted to take. And so I just took that path, and everyone was going to university. So, it just seemed like the natural thing to do. And I realized during the first year when I was just going to school and sleeping in all the classes, I don't think I went to any classes really, because I lived so close to the school that I was just like, let me just stay home. I didn't really go to Frosh either. So I didn't really have that experience of like meeting a ton of people. And so I went to school to sleep, and then I went home and I slept. And over the years, I realized that number one, it was such a big waste of money for me because I just couldn't pay attention in class. Whenever I was there, I was sitting in the back, and I just was just zoning out because none of this actually interested me. And I realized after the first year, maybe this isn't the direction for me. But I kind of grew up into this space of university, do it, finish your schooling, and then move on. And it just felt like such a waste of time and energy for me. So after my second year, there was one class where it was either I passed this and I get into my third year and I got a 49% in it. And I was like, this must be a sign.
That's fate.
Yeah. So I'm like, let me just stop here. Let me move on from this. I just, told my family, I'm like, oh, I think I'm done here. They're like, cool, do whatever you want, figure it
Mm,
out. And then I was already at that point, I was always into fashion. It was something that I was going onto forums for. It was kind of like my nerdy secret in the back end,
mm,
style forum and places like that, Reddit, where I've just spent so much time looking at like brands, clothing, stuff like that. And then I had a Value Village behind me, which is a thrift shop here, and I just started thrifting. And I was finding all these brands that I knew was valuable and was exciting for me. And this was kind of the start of my first business.
mm.
It was me thrifting from thrift stores and then reselling it back on eBay or selling it back on these forums. And that was kind of my first foray into the space. It was just kind of this new excitement for me where I can kind of create my own path and not really have to work with for someone else, right? It was really up to me to go out, find the work and find the clothing so I can sell it. Because if I didn't find clothing, I wouldn't sell or make any money.
Mhm.
And so it was just constant kind of path that I had to take where if I didn't do it, no one was gonna tell like no one was gonna help me,
Yeah.
right? It was either that or I go and find a job. But every job that I was kind of thinking about, I just hated. It's like I can't really do an office job. It's just to me super mind numbing. Nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, it's like I could barely stay alive in school.
Mhm.
I was just gonna fall asleep, and I've tried these kind of like quick retail jobs in the past, and first thing for me was it was just not it. I felt like I was stuck under someone else's schedule, and that was kind of the first part of it. Yeah.
So it really was like you got to make your own business, like you got to work for yourself or bust, eh?
Yeah, it was kind of always this kind of feeling of I can make so much more and do so much more by following this path,
Mm.
and it was never really an option. So everything to me was like stepping stones.
Yeah.
So I was still, even after I stopped doing the reselling, I moved into a place where I started selling suits at a local store here, and that was a time where it was just about learning, right? I think with every process for me, it's about how can I learn as much as possible and then potentially flip it into my own thing again.
Yeah.
Like, how can I take the best and then realize it and figure it out for my own? And from that, even that path of, spending a year or two working into a retail shop, I learned how to kind of figure out the things that I liked about that process. And then when I started my own shop, it sucked as well. It wasn't actually great at all. Like, it was kind of like a whole flip side of what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be all great, and like, I had all this. We were working with some of the best manufacturers in the world, and we knew the process and the product was actually really good,
Mm.
but we didn't know how to market stuff as well, and we didn't know how to actually realize that and find the right audiences for it. But what I learned from that was I picked up a camera, I started taking photos. I really liked the process behind the scenes of like bringing it into Lightroom, coloring it, kind of making some art out of it, and that was kind of my first like footing into the creative world.
Mhm.
And when I stopped doing the whole shooting thing, I realized I didn't like doing the whole tangible, hands-on part of it,
Mhm.
measuring people, setting it off, making sure that the measurements are correct when they come back, because the margins are so low. And if you make one mistake somewhere, then you've just lost all your margins. And
Yeah.
we weren't really making that much money off of it anyways.
Yeah.
And so the big thing was once I stopped doing that, I realized that, the whole creative behind the scenes space, the social world was a whole new world. I didn't even know this thing existed. And so this was probably towards the end of 2018. I picked up my first personal camera and I made the decision to get into the filmmaking world.
Cool. What did that first year of you working in this space look like? Because I know it's changed so much since the beginning, or like since like when you started. Because that was like what, like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So the landscape has changed so much, and it's like become so much more accessible.
Yeah.
But what is that like? What did that look like to you when you were first entering that space?
Yeah, 2018, the end of 2018 was really interesting. I think this was the boom of when YouTube kind of started to pick up
Mm-hmm.
as well for the filmmaking world. Peter McKinnon's, Matty Hapoya's, these guys were like blowing up because, it was all about this space of, hey, you're picking up a camera. What's the next move? How do you learn these gimbal tricks that everyone needs to know? How do you shoot? How do you tell a story? How to do all these things? And so for me, it kind of felt like the perfect timing. I think anything before that, during that time, red cameras were like the biggest thing. Red Geminis, like the Alexas and stuff, were like so far away, but like the Reds were like, whoa, this is the coolest camera ever. And even to this day, the Red name still kind of has like a connotation where everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Even if you're an outside person, not everyone might know like an Arri Alexa or something like that. But the Reds and Sonys were kind of like this come up era as well. So for me, it made a lot of sense. I picked up a Sony camera because I was like, everyone's marketing this one. You know, I got influenced into that camera, and I
Mhm.
picked up a gimbal at the same time, and I'm like, I'm set forever. I'm gonna be so sick at this. And you know, when I first picked it up, I had all this like energy, and I knew I was gonna do something great with this space, um, but I didn't know how. And I looked around, and I was like, where do I even start with this? And I think a lot of people start at this place where you just have a camera. You're like so enthusiastic, and maybe
Mhm.
that's just like my over eagerness or hyper like fixation on like I can just do this and like keeping the optimism there. But I had this camera now, and I was like, I have nothing to shoot.
Mm.
This is a lot of money, and I have like, you know, I kind of went full into it. I didn't really have a backup, you know, business or job at the time,
Yeah.
and so this was my all in 100%. And I realized, okay, to do this, the biggest thing is going to be about finding the right people and just getting practice.
Mhm.
I had no skills. I've never actually shot with a video camera before, so I didn't know any of the settings. I didn't know any of these things. I just knew I needed to get out there, so I reached out to barbershops and coffee shops, and my first video was probably a coffee shop video.
Mhm.
You know, maybe super classic for a lot of people. It's just going out and being like, I'm gonna shoot you a cinematic thing for your coffee shop. It's like, let me shoot slow motion everything,
Yeah.
120 FPS. And
Yeah.
it's just like that's all the skills I had, you know. But I had this optimism for the space that I
Mhm.
was like, this is gonna be great. And you know, a lot of people don't realize that in the beginning it was two choices. I was taking photos before in the shooting company, and I was like, I either become a photographer, which is kind of like an oversaturated market in my eyes,
Mhm.
um, especially for someone starting out kind of like fresh, or I go the video route, which was to me a lot harder. And the funny thing is, it wasn't because of the creative, like there was no actual creative thought behind this.
Yeah.
It was like, what's the better decision for the business? And that's kind of where I start from and where I always come from in the beginning was like, what's going to make me more money? And maybe that seems a little bit like, you know, a lot of people might think it's all about the art and stuff like that. For me, it was all about the business
Mhm.
because I know at the same time, it's like if I don't make money in this first year, I'm kind of screwed,
Yeah.
right? It's like this isn't a for funsies thing. It has never been a super for fun thing. Um, Maybe it's transitioned into that over time, but in the beginning, it was just like I need to find work, so I need to get as good as possible, as quick as possible.
Mhm.
And so that was really my only main motive. It was doing that. And then so I was shooting this coffee shop. You know, one of my first big stories that I tell all the time is kind of like the prime story for how filmmakers should do their work is I reached out to Lululemon because in the beginning I had like a couple big companies I wanted to work with. Lululemon, Nike, Rain Champ, you know, what a classic trio in the
Yeah.
Canadian market.
Yeah.
Um, Lululemon just because to me, like growing up, I could never afford Lululemon. It was like this kind of like, oh, $75 for, you know, pants or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
oh, there's no way that number just don't even make sense, right?
Yeah.
But it was still such a big brand. It still is such a big brand that I had it on such a high pedestal in the beginning. And yeah, I reached out to their local Toronto page, and which is funny because now I'm really good friends with Serena as well. But the person who was handling the account, and first thing she said was, "Do you have a portfolio?" And I'm like, I haven't shot anything before.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't say it to her, but I was like, give me a week. And then I went onto their Lululemon page. I looked up every kind of like affiliate or whoever they were posting.
Mhm.
And there's people like Quentin Jacobs, a photo of him, which, you know, really great friends with him now. But then I also saw like Parkdale Roadrunners. And I was like, okay, let me just reach out to Parkdale Roadrunners. Hey, can I make a video for you? It happened to be a Monday
Mhm.
and they run on Tuesdays. And then they were like, yeah, we're actually doing our like Christmas drive, like our cookie drive, which so it's around this time, December. You want to swing by? We're not doing anything. So I swung by and I showed up with my camera, super awkward, sat in the back. Like I'm like socially awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I had like my headphones in at a shoot. It was just weird. Like no one could talk to me. So it was just awkward. Like who's this guy in the back?
With a
Uh,
camera.
with the camera, like never shows up. Like this isn't also a person that's in the run community,
Mhm.
right? I just showed up, so I was just a random guy with a camera. So I kind of was like talking to like one or two people that were like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" Obviously, there's extroverts there, so it's perfect. They're just like they come talk to you.
Thank
Like
God for those
thank
people,
God
by
for
the
those
way.
people. Yeah, because I would have just been like an awkward person in the back, and like I just had no confidence too. Because you have to think of it, it's like so much imposter syndrome of just like
Mhm.
I'm here with my Sony A6400, you know, single lens. What the hell am I doing? I don't even know what I'm shooting. I know how to shoot slow mo, but I'm just there,
Yeah.
right? And so I sat there, and you know, people were coming around shooting whatever, and then they went off for their run. And back then, I was like, I have enough. Like in a run world, you should be running with them or going with them to show the run.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I was just shooting slow mo of them talking and classic recap
It's like a
space stuff.
vlog, dude.
It is like a vlog, and it's like, who is this guy? And then everyone left, and one guy stayed back, and he was his name was Mike, and he stayed back to keep check of everything, all the clothes and stuff that were left back. And I talked to him, and he's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He was the one I was talking to at the Parkdale Instagram. He's like, "Oh, nice to meet you." He's like, "Do you just get into video?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, what do you want? Who do you want to shoot for long term? And I'm like, "Oh, like Lululemon is kind of like my big goal." He's like, "Oh, sweet. I'm actually like the global director of like relationships for the pro athletes in Lululemon," and he's like also like the co-founder of Parkdale Roadrunners as well. And it was in that moment I was like, I was trying to hold back like a smile, because I was like, oh shoot, did I just like stumble across the right people that I should be talking to? And I was just so hyped for it. They came back, I finished the video that night. Their run starts at 7, they end at 8. I went home, probably took me an hour. I just started editing. By 5 o'clock in the morning, I already had the edit for him. And they're like, whoa, what the hell? It's like, did you not sleep? I'm like, no, I did not sleep. I'm gonna sleep now, right? It's like you have this really early experience of like, I need to show up correctly in the right places. And even to this day, that kind of mentality still sticks with me, to be like, if it's a new client, even if it's an old client, I do want to always show up in the right capacity. And so I sent it off to them. They were super happy, excited about it. And like, that was kind of the early blossoming stages. And then like 2 months later, he sent me to like a real job for Lululemon. And after I finished that project, even Serena, she saw the video as well, because they were posting it there. And it was just kind of these like micro steps that happened over and over and over and over again. To get to kind of that first year. But all to say that by the end of that first year, I wanted to quit. Like, it was just not a great year. Like, a lot of people were like, oh, you're working with Lululemon, so sick. And like, yeah, I was working with Lululemon for that one job, and I made $700, but I spent all of it on the gear to actually make sure I could shoot it properly. And I was like, to the world, this might seem really great, but like deep down, I'm like, this is so brutal. Like, nothing is going right. I'm like just doing a lot of barbershop videos, and I'm playing this game of like, I have to sell and reach out to these people. It takes time to actually for them to get back, to like sell them on an idea to go shoot something. Because it's also in the beginning, I'm just reaching out to small businesses, people that I can kind of like have access to. Like, these big companies aren't going to reach out to you or talk to you. You have nothing to show for it. And I had nothing to show for it too. So I was just constantly building these small little portfolio pieces. And over time, I was just super burnt out in my first year, probably made no money. And then I was just like, is this it? Like, is this the most sustainable way I can turn this into? Like, when I first started, all I was seeing was like these really cool ads. And I'm like, I'm not doing those cool ads. This is really rough. Like, I'm just shooting more hair cutting videos. Like, how much cooler can I make this video? And then at some point, halfway through, I switched into like, how do I teach people video strategy? Let me sell the strategy a little bit more, because after the first 6 months, I'm like, okay, I have learned all the technical skills. In my mind, I've learned all the technical skills, but I need to progress this into more of like a business strategy so I can make more money. And so that's always the game. I was chasing $300 gigs. And then when they weren't paying like in 2 weeks, I'm like, I'm screwed. I need, like, now I'm chasing people
for the next 2 weeks.
I'm chasing people for like $300. Like, hey, can I just pick up the check? Like, that's kind of how that mentality was going. And it was really rough, because I thought I was doing the right thing still. I thought I was shooting, buying the right gear for myself to elevate. Because when you're especially in this bubble of YouTube, especially in the beginning, everyone's like, buy a bunch of shit. It's like the stuff is going to be the stuff is going to be the things that are like going to push you forward. And so I was constantly just buying new camera gear. Like, oh, if I upgrade this, in my mind, the client's going to see how much better the quality is going to be, and then they're going to hire me for sure. That doesn't happen.
No.
Right?
That's exactly like how it went. It's so interesting to see like how familiar that path is. Like, it resonates with me so much, because that was the exact same thing that happened to me. Like, I would just be doing like all these like smaller shoots, and every time I'd be like, okay, they're only paying me like X amount of dollars, and it's like nothing, but they're giving me the full creative control. So I'm like, I'm gonna go crazy. And like, I'm gonna deliver like these insane photos, and it's gonna blow up. And then like, this is like gonna be the one that's gonna like take me to the next level and bring me like, go from like three figures to like four figures to like whatever, but like that would just never happen because like
Yeah.
you're dealing with like the same clients every single time and they don't have that budget. But it's so interesting to see like how that's like constant. But I want to go back to this point that you made, and I think like everyone in this industry when they first started out has had that thought of like, yo, is this it? Like, is this all I'm gonna do? Am I gonna get paid like nothing every single time just to like burn myself out? So what do you think was that moment, or what changed for you that helped you push beyond that threshold?
Yeah. The biggest thing was looking at my local industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're in the beginning stages of this industry, you kind of are only enveloped by like your local industry. You don't even know that Berlin or LA or whatever exists yet
Yeah.
because it's just so far away. You're just like focused on this like world that you're in. And especially if you're just sold the videography world, you're just following every videographer in the city. You're seeing who they're working with, what they're doing, and everyone's kind of doing the same thing. But like secretly, I know everyone's just kind of hurting together at the same time,
Mm.
and like no one's talking about it. So it's really interesting to be like, I'm sitting in this place where I'm struggling. Uh, Other people probably struggling at the same time. And then I was looking at these companies, and there's a company called Tier Zero in the city.
I know of it.
Yeah, Tier Zero was kind of like, to me, like the biggest pedestal because they were doing these really cool projects with Nike, and I was like, how do I get there? You know, and I looked at their credits list, and I was like, whoa, there's like 15 people on this set. Like, what do you even do with that? Why would I want to do that? That was actually a mentality thing where I was like, why would I want to work with 15 people? I need the credit for myself. Like, I need to show people that I can do all this. It's actually the beneficial thing for everyone because, like, I could do it for less, guys. Like, you're just like, there's like this mindset of like, I'm going to beat everyone out by myself, just by myself. And like, that's what you're sold in the beginning. And like, it gets so ingrained in you that like, if you can just do it all, you're going to make all this money.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that that's actually the biggest detriment to like everyone's business. Even to this day, it's like if you don't have enough people to work with or people to surround yourself that are stronger than you in certain areas, you just shoot yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent that first year all solo, not even looking at other people. Everyone was my enemy. Like if someone was getting another job, I was pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I am grinding my ass off here and I can't even get that job. And that job looks so sick. I worked with Lululemon. How did they get that job? It was just like this really negative feedback loop that, you know, also because I didn't have anyone to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
it was just in my head. And I talked to so many filmmakers, photographers, anyone in this space growing up. And it's the same thing because it's like you don't have anyone to talk to. And it's almost this like echo chamber where if you don't talk to new people, you never realize that you need to talk to people to get out of that circle. And so in that first year, I saw Tier Zero. This is the end of probably 2019. And I was like, I need to do that. The only reason why they can do more is because they have more people to help them. And I didn't understand all the intricacies yet. I just noticed that like a bigger team allowed you to do better looking work.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I didn't have a portfolio to get to there. And so I was in like this spot where I'm sure a lot of people might be in right now, where it's like, I don't know what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who do I even reach out to? Who do I talk to? What are the jobs to get me to that space? And so I felt a little stuck. I knew what the goal was now at the end of 2019 was to get to that bigger group space. But yeah, I just didn't have a direction.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what the next step.
So what was that next step? Like,
perfect question.
Yeah.
The next step was I was following local videographers,
Yeah.
and I saw someone, Justin Manabat, post a video, and it was out of nowhere, but I was following him, and maybe someone that I was following posted his story, being like, "Whoa, this is so sick." And I found Justin, and he was doing great storytelling stuff. And to this day, like Justin's kind of main thing is like storytelling. Like emotion has always been his biggest driver, and trying to make people feel something with his work. And I had like the complete opposite. I was so technical, I was so boring, and I was like trying to do the coolest things. So like slow motion ramps and stuff like that. Like speed ramps are king, you know? It's like back then, if I could speed ramp this into this, why would I speed ramp a speech into, you know, like a walking, like that's just weird things. But, you know, people care so much about the technical sometimes. And I was falling into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, this guy's doing something completely different. I haven't done anything that had emotion in it or any story or feeling. And so I reached out to Justin, And back then, Justin was doing like a lot more travel videography stuff. That was kind of like his niche. But then he was also doing stuff with like his girlfriend Larissa and like all these things that started from a story, and then it built, like, he didn't even care about like speed ramps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't, he was doing weddings back then as well, which is again very story driven and like kind of emotional driven. And yeah, I reached out to him and I was like, yo, do you want to meet up? Don't know what it's about yet, but like, do you want to just meet up? Like, I would love to chat with you. He's like, nah. And like for like 2 months, I was chasing him to be like, yo, let's meet up. He's like, oh, I'm going to Egypt for a bit. Like, maybe we'll catch up afterwards. And then by like the third or fourth time, he's like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. Like, let's meet up. And then I brought him over to Yorkdale, which is like a mall in between the both of us. He was out in Scarborough. I was in North York. And we sat down and we just sat for like 2 hours. I'm like, what are you up to? What am I up to? You know, and then you kind of play coy in the beginning, but then I'm just like, I'm hurting. Like, this is like a
Yeah.
brutal space. And like, and then he's like, you know, started opening up, talking about that stuff as well. And he's like, yeah, I did this trip in Egypt. Like, I wasn't getting paid almost anything, but these influencers and all these people that I was shooting for, like, they got their flights paid for. They're selling like crazy LUTs and stuff like that, making like a ton of money. And he was just like, I'm just taking it for the trip. But the experience only goes so far, because he's like, I've done so many of these, but I'm like, I'm not really making money.
Now I'm dead.
Yeah, like, and I'm just hurting. So, you know, we sat there kind of just ideating. And funny enough, like that first meeting, I was like, we should start a YouTube channel. But the thing is, like, we don't have any skills. So what are we even going to talk about? Right? Like, there was no purpose to it. But it's all to say is, like, we left that meeting in a good place, because we were like, let's try this. Let's try to work together, because he also knew about Tier Zero as well. And we just sat there like, look, they have a credit list of people doing different things. What if we started to kind of implement this world of like, let's try different things. Let's see if you're a better director or if I'm a better cinematographer. I'm not. So you just ended up doing a lot of everything in the beginning. But what happens is we learned about like how to reunite people's like resources. Like, I owned a camera, one C stand, and like a light. And he owned like one of each as well. So now we have two. And now we're like, whoa, we could dual cam. Like, this is crazy. Like, so we're just like explore this new space completely. And that was a really fun place to be in. In the beginning, it was just like shooting his brother, dancing. And then you know, 2 months later, COVID hits. So we're like, okay, well, let's just pause this for a bit. We were just still talking, and we were getting to a place where, you know, we bought a course for like $2,000 to teach us how to do like sales and marketing in this filmmaking world. But it was very specific around small businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know both of our dreams are not that place, right? Like, we want to do commercials and like documentaries and things that make us feel something. And so in the short term, it taught us a lot about how to get out there, how to reach out to people and work in that space, but it wasn't in the right direction. And so we just took a little pause on it, and yeah, COVID hit, and then we kind of just sat back for like about a year.
But you didn't really.
No.
Like, what? You did something very interesting during that time, which I think.
Yeah. The stress of this space is you feel like technically the industry was still open, and, you know, the entertainment world was still kind of moving along. But for us in the commercial world, you know, quote unquote commercial world, we didn't really know what commercials were back then, by the way. What we were shooting was content, and we were like, let's just make cooler, better content. But, you know, as someone that cares about big vision stuff all the time, I was like, now I'm starting to follow these bigger companies that are doing really great work. And I was spending a lot of time on Vimeo, which, if you don't know Vimeo, it's just like a network of videos, kind of like YouTube, but for the filmmaking world. All the directors and production companies and agencies put their work there. And you just get this whole new vast opening of like, this is what they're doing. Like, this is where all the money's going. So if I just reverse engineer everything, and if I can just do like a little inkling of what they're doing and hit that feeling and that mark, then maybe I can start to sit into that space. Maybe me and Justin can start doing more of that work. Yeah. Because there was a reason why Tier Zero was getting this work, and it's through relationships, it's through like building up these skills and everything. But I'm like, when you're young too, and you have this energy, you think you can do everything. And I still think I could do everything. It just takes these steps to get there. Yeah. And so after a year of probably shooting this random things to get by, we were just dying. Like, we were shooting at one point people working out. We loved the people that were doing it, but we were shooting them working out, and that was like our entire thing for like months. We would go shoot like 5 workouts, edit them. It would take forever on my end because we were just, I don't know, I was trying to do fancy stuff with it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't need to do fancy stuff. It was burning me out. We weren't really making so much money off of it. And we're like, okay, let's take a pause right now and figure out what the next steps are. Because if I keep doing this, I'm gonna quit for real now.
Yeah.
Because there's like I could just go back to work and just like hate myself forever. But that's just again personal thing for myself. But I'm like, I need to make this work. And so again, me being someone that's really like adamant on pushing and like trying new things, I reached out to VizTech. Uh, they were gracious enough to lend us a camera, the Z Cam.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the F6, the full frame one. And even though we were already shooting on like the A7 III, which is like a full frame, DSLR, not DSLR, like a mirrorless camera, the Z Cam for whatever reason, and they gave us lenses and stuff like that, like the whole new package. It felt like we were taking this next step into our life, which is like cinematography. Didn't know what it meant yet, but we were just like, let's just go and use this. It gave us this excitement back into our blood of like, it's not the Sony camera. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is that next level. And that day when we picked it up, haven't even figured out the camera yet. We already called our buddy, like, let's go shoot something. Let's go shoot this running commercial. And then our buddy Anoke showed up. We shot from like, 3 o'clock, picked up the camera at 12, shot at 3, ended at like 9 o'clock. And me and Justin's kind of relationship when it comes to post-production is he takes on the edit, I do the sound and color, and then we just put it out.
Yeah.
And so back to that kind of Lululemon feeling of like, there's this excitement. This feels cool. It looks great. We just went out to a field, shot some stuff. After we finished shooting, by the next morning, we already put the video out. And then we're like, what's the next video?
Yeah.
What's the next video? And we had the camera for about a month. And within that month, we probably shot 7 or so spec projects. And this was really the basis of like our entire business model and how we kind of grew from there.
It's funny that you mentioned Tier Zero because I did my internship at Tier Zero last year and I worked there. And that was me like first entering this actual industry space, and I was like very much similar to you where I was like videographer, like just like shooting stuff just to like shoot it and trying to like piece it together. But then working within that space, I was like, oh, like they have like a director, they have like a producer, and I didn't know what any of that stuff really meant until I like kept doing stuff, and that's when it like really clicked. Like you got to have like the right team for people to like fill in the weaknesses that you have, and that's something I implemented with Doghouse. And then I brought in like Kate, who's like our producer, and like Charlie, who's our cinematographer, because I also am not good with cameras at all. I just like looking at things. So like we have those within Tenfold as well. We have Adrian and Zach who do very specific things within this company. So how do these two pieces of the puzzle connect with the four to make Tenfold as a whole? How did you guys decide to actually start Tenfold?
Yeah. In the beginning, it was just me and Justin, and we were Connect Productions. Way different. No
That's
one
so
talks
good,
about
dude.
this one. This was just video production for like small businesses and stuff. And we went through the system. That course taught us very specific things to do. And we're like, this is going to be us for now.
Mhm.
And it was after us doing these 7 specs where we realized like, oh, wait, maybe we are good at this. Like we just weren't putting our time and energy into the right places. Because you do this thing where like you just go all in on like the video production of, corporate companies.
Mhm.
Let me make money. Let me make money. Because then, you're always balancing this game of like, can I make enough money to keep doing what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
So one day I can get to this place. But then you kind of can't do that at the same time. And so, after these 7 specs, we sat back and we're like, this is kind of going in the right direction. Like all these videographers in the city started following us, started getting like a little bit more notoriety in that space. And we're like, we start feeling real good about ourselves. But then we had to give the camera back. And we're like, we're screwed. We tied our entire like identities around this camera.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was all we had left. And so we kind of slowed down that process. We kind of like dabbled back into this kind of space of like, let's do some work again. So it was just all fun and games, but then like the world started opening up a bit more. And during this time, we had one of our friends, Nicole Shapiro. She started NShaps online. She started a group on Discord.
Mhm.
And especially it was a great time because community building wasn't, again, not that big of a thing. It felt like everyone was kind of against each other back then.
Yeah.
You're just fighting for the same jobs. But this kind of space opened up a new world of like, let's talk. let's have real conversations about what we're doing, what everyone's goals are, and like how to improve, like, keep moving things forward. Because the space is, can be definitely tricky,
Mm-hmm.
especially by yourself. So this was a great place where this is actually where I met Adrian. And again, everyone's doing their own things, completely different markets, but everyone saw us kind of moving forward and doing cool things. We were starting to do bigger projects, starting to work with Sportsnet and stuff like that. This is when we started dabbling into rentals, um, just trying a bit of everything,
Mm-hmm.
but to this next level. Like, let's move away. Let's get closer to that tier zero world. And Adrian one day came up, it's like, messaged me and Justin separately because he knew we were working together. It was like, hey, I have this job. It's a real estate project. It's interviews. I'm like, here we go.
Mm.
Okay, what's this gonna be? He's like, the budget's like $25,000, and I'm like, what? I messaged Justin on his side, like, what? Like, is this real? But then, he saw the work that we were doing. We had just picked up a FX9 at that point. Again, still playing that game of like, this camera is gonna get us everything.
Yeah.
But it kind of did, because it kind of opened up this door to Adrian, because he, you know, in his eyes saw us moving up into this new space too. Like, we were elevating.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to kind of elevate with you guys. And so we got together, shot that project. It worked out great, actually. So we had a really great relationship of like how we functioned there. And that was like the first stage with Adrian of like, let's just keep building. Do you want to show up for this shoot? Do you want to show up for this other shoot? And we
Mhm.
kind of went back and forth. Like, he kept having jobs, we kept having jobs. We kept trying to find our place. But in the beginning, it was just like all of our brains coming together.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
It sounds a lot like he was kind of the EP, the executive producer. Like he was already like stepped right into that role when you guys first started, because he like brought this job to you guys and stuff.
Yeah, in that sense, yes. And like, he still likes directing as well and shooting back then as well, a ton. So it was this really weird balance of like, because there was only three of us, everyone kind of had a hand in the camera. Like, I used to shoot back then as well.
Mhm.
Crazy. It was so bad. Like,
Yeah.
don't put the camera in my head. But like,
Yeah.
I had to, because we only had three of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know how to grow bigger than that yet either.
Yeah.
We didn't really, know what a PA was.
Yeah.
We were just showing up. Like, that's about it, the extent of it. And so it took a while for us to even realize what roles were. But back
Mhm.
then it was fun. We just like, whoa, we can keep getting bigger jobs by just keep showing up, right? And showing
Yeah.
up to the world and putting our work out and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you guys were all like shooting a little bit, but
Yeah.
then the final piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
Zachary guy.
It was a while till we actually reached out to Zach. And like, I found Zach through an IG reel video that he put out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was him shooting this car commercial, but he put his face in it. Like, it wasn't just like a BTS narration thing. He
Yeah.
was in there as like a narrator host. And I was like, whoa, this is interesting. Who is this guy? Like, there's that almost like immediate trust that you build with someone when they show their faces.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this guy has like a YouTube channel. I didn't know he had a YouTube channel back then, but me being the kind of like finesser guy,
Yeah.
right? I was like, whoa, that thing I talked about Justin like years ago about being like a YouTube channel or having a YouTube channel, Zach's kind of doing this already. Let me just like keep him in my back pocket. So I was following him, and then one day another relationship showed up through the Discord, through Niru. He had like a car that he had access to, like a Porsche for the Porsche car people. They were shooting like I don't remember what car it is, like the electric one that was just coming out. And he's like, you guys want to like shoot something? And I reached out to him like, yo, it'd be sick if we shot something car related. Because in my mind, I'm just like trying to expand my space still. I want to like do car stuff. Who knows? I was just trying everything.
Yeah.
And this was still spec, so it was all out of pocket. But I was like, there's no way I can do car stuff by myself. Justin doesn't know what he's doing. Adrian doesn't know what he's doing. But then Zach's first video was about how he shoots cars all the time and like supercars and stuff. So I reached out to Zach like, hey, we have this thing coming up. Do you want to like help out? And like, after years of talking to Zach and like him telling the story on his end,
Yeah.
he's like, holy crap, these guys want to work with me. Like, but it kind of went both ways. We were both super excited to work on this project. And we showed up and we had no idea what we were doing. Like, Zach was kind of leading it on like the car rigging front.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of came with his A game, made sure it was going well. And like, me and Justin were trying to build a story out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, even towards that point, like, Justin was kind of leading more of the story approach. I was kind of leading more of like the visual and how we were shooting things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a weird dynamic because Justin was our main DP back then. Like, Zach, for the first year after meeting him, like, he didn't really shoot much. He was just kind of our gaffer.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how the relationship started with the four of us. And then after that Porsche project went well, we just kind of stayed in touch, and we just, hey, Zach's kind of an interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to come onto this set? You want to, And then we kind of just, the four of us slowly built up from there.
Cool. So what is this like timeline wise? You start in 2018, you said, right?
Yeah.
Like where you first start, like picked up the camera, and then you had Justin.
Yeah. Justin for that like 2019 end of year space, for maybe like 5 months we were working together.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and then we didn't come back up till like the end of 2021. And that's where we met Adrian. And then probably in 2022 is when we started working with Zach.
Yeah.
And so all things considered, kind of crazy to think about. It's only 2024 right now, and like we've worked with Zach for like 2.5 years or whatever. But it feels like we've been working together forever, because there's so many projects that we've like that no one's ever seen, that we just went through the the hardships of to get to where we are at now. But yeah, it's really fun time.
So what was the switch from Connect production to Tenfold?
Oh, that died very quickly.
Yeah.
Like Connect Productions, after a while, like no one saw that. It wasn't really performing that well, because we started shifting out from the video business world, where we were just doing like video brand stories and stuff.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing wrong with that too. Like, just to go back to that point, it's like there's people that want to stay as a videographer and stay in that space and get really good at it. It's just, we knew in the beginning the stuff that we wanted to do was not that. And so we just had to find every possible route out of that, and still playing that game, because finances, we want to make still money as we continue building our business and brand. But at the same time, we're like, let's put a hard stance on this. Let's be intentional with our work. The conviction is there to like constantly try to push forward. We were just making all these like really basic newbie mistakes throughout the path, and it's part of the game. But yeah.
So when was like the name Tenfold? Firstly, where did that even come from?
Yeah, this was a conversation that I had with Justin all the time. And when we started to build, it was just me and Justin starting Tenfold first, before Adrian and Zach came in. And it was something that I always said of like, we're this small little like fish in a pond, and the work that we want to do is like always at a scale of like tenfold. Like we want to be tenfold like more than what people give us. It's almost like this, this underdog story game that we play, where it's like, we're never gonna get that $1 million budget or whatever, but guess what, we're gonna put everything into it and show up and like really put that energy to be the best. And I think that's kind of this ethos that we've carried along throughout our path, because it still is there. We always want to like execute and show up, but at the same time, it's like no one really needs to know how much we're getting paid for these projects. We just want to show up the best way possible.
So when did
that happen? I have no idea. Probably like 2021, 2022.
When did you decide that like the four of you should start this business together? Like, what did that transition look like from let's like work together to let's become a business?
That was actually very recent. But like we were working together as a team for years first. And I think there's something special about that. It's because you get to work out all the kinks. We've worked with a lot of people over the years, and like it's a combination of like, do you connect and vibe and gel with this person? Can you spend all your time with them? Can you like bring the right energy? Can you do all these things that make sense to come together? Because again, it is a strength and weakness game that you're playing. And for example, like Zach's a much better DP than I am, but I rather talk to people and clients and be a little bit more forward facing there. Justin's a much better storyteller than I am, right? It's like Adrian's better at like all the agency world people and talking to people and managing relationships. It's like that's kind of the game that we had to figure out as well, because we didn't know in the beginning everything. And this was probably our biggest downfall for the longest time. We were all doing the same thing. Like when we were working together, it was like 4 directors almost, and then 4 DPs on the same job. So there was no separation. And I think that was like a hindrance for us, but it took us a while to get to a place where like, oh, there's too many chefs in the kitchen right now. We can't even think. Like if I had to think about a new idea, I would almost default to having to reach out to the 4 of them to be like, what do you guys think? Right. And you lose a lot of like your autonomy there as well. Cause you're like, am I even thinking about good ideas? Right. Like you don't have any like self-sufficiency or anything. And so it was a little messy in the beginning to get to a place where we felt like, okay, we actually need to separate this. Like I'm not going to touch a camera, because when I try to touch a camera, it makes Zach feel like I'm not putting in my best efforts either.
Mhm.
So we kind of needed to find our footing there. And it wasn't probably till like truthfully last year, like 2 years officially, that we settled in and we're like, let's turn this into a real business. Because we needed to figure ourselves out first.
Yeah.
Much like any relationship, you need to just realize what works and what doesn't work. And then we officially kind of signed it in. But before that, we had like a lot of like ups and downs too as well.
Mhm. So 2023 was the first year that like you guys operate as like a business.
Yeah, more or less.
Cool. What did that year look like for you? How did that play out?
If we go back to that 2022 year where we first started working together, it was really great. It was a lot of energy. We started getting a lot of clientele for this space. Like we were doing content, but at a commercial level,
Mhm.
which is a really fun place to be in because the budget slowly started to creep up. In the beginning, we were stuck at like the $500 range, even between the four of us, like the $2,500 range for such a long time. And we were really struggling to like, you went from one person, $2,500 might be okay for the month, but now you're like, $2,500 for a full month for four people is nothing, especially when you have all expenses. Cool, we have more resources now. So we were starting to pile in like, oh, we have like 4 cameras, super dope, but we have a lot of C stands. Zach came with a lot of grip stuff. Like Adrian was starting to buy like an FX6, for example. And then Zach wanted to buy an FX6 as well. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Why do we need 5 cameras right now? Or why do we need the same cameras even? We already have like an FX3, FX6, FX9. Why don't you go and like get like a Astera Titan tubes? Like that's going to elevate the lighting side of things. And like that's become super invaluable for the business. But like that's how we started to think. It was a little bit more group focused and less individualized.
Yeah.
And it was a great place. That's like where you really build understanding other people, how to work with each other. Me and Zach hate each other for a long time. Not like
Really?
physically, not like hate each other. It's just like we got each other's nerves because like I was telling him to do things. He didn't like how I was doing things. And like we didn't know how to communicate in the beginning. And it was in those moments where I'm like, oh, that's fun. Like we need to get past this because if we don't, like it's just all downhill from here. But we learned how to communicate and like now we kind of like read each other's minds in terms of things. If we're on set, we can kind of like, oh, cool, he's already doing the thing I want to do. But in the beginning, it just wasn't like that. And going back to the place of like 2022, Zach wasn't shooting anything. He had to kind of go through the ropes and like it's almost like a hierarchical thing, right? It's like Justin was shooting everything, but is Justin now the best person for that? And over time, it's like Justin's like I like the directing side of things, and so we had to shift from there as well. So like every quarter, it was like reshift. How do we kind of keep balancing this world out? And it was a lot of like trial and error, a lot of super shitty jobs. Not that people were shitty, but it was more so like not what we were expecting to do. And it took us a long time to just figure out where everyone fit.
And then transitioning from like 2023 into this year, honestly, I feel like there's been like a huge amount of growth, even just like from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
Just like seeing like, whoa, the Tenfold like YouTube channel,
The
like
nation.
all the things, yeah, the Tenfold nation, all the things you guys are doing, like the way you guys like present yourself to the whole world. Like before I even knew you guys, I was like, whoa, these guys are like
very intentional thing.
Tell me
Because
about that.
in the beginning, we're just throwing everything out there. And I think the biggest skill for anyone that's in this space is learning how to reverse engineer. I think it's like the most critical thing you can think about, especially if you're someone that's like constantly forward facing and like trying to think of the next steps. Is you cannot show up in this space and get bigger if you're not getting the work that you want to be doing. Like you can't get a Nike ad if you don't show anything that's Nike related or like in that adjacency of like, are you even doing sports related content? Like why would Nike reach out to you? Right. So we needed to reverse engineer. How do we get to this next stage? How do we show up like everyone else that's at that higher level? And so I don't think the game is about impressing the people around you, right? It's like, why would I try to market to other videographers? Like that's not my end goal person. My end goal person is agencies and producers and people that are going to get me jobs, direct to client, whatever it is. The brands need to see that I am actually at a good place or the company's at a good place, that like you're coming together and you're at the same pedestal level, right? It's like if they saw us and we were just doing lowly level stuff and it's like, I'm not going to spend and invest my time and money into this company if they're not pushing or trying to be as good as possible at my level. And so we knew and we needed to sit down and be like, let's just restart this from scratch, right? The work is good and it just needs to be presented in the right way. And like this is over time realizing what branding is, right? It's like how do people associate us when they're not, when we're not in their face right now.
Yeah.
If I'm not in the same room as you and you're talking about Tenfold in another room with someone else, like, what are you guys talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of the biggest thing for us. We needed to show up the way we wanted other people to see us, even if we didn't feel like it, which is a lot of people don't talk about. It's like, even if we don't feel like we're the biggest company in the world, we can still show up like we're trying to be, right? And I think there's a lot of value in that.
It's that optics game.
It is the optics game. And you've heard me say this a million times now, how many times I say optics, because it's like, it's not always about like, being the best yet, because I don't think I'm the best at all. I don't think Tenfold's at the best place yet.
Mm.
I think we're always striving to be better, but there's a place of where you are right now, being realistic with that and like elevating what that looks like. So you've heard me say this a million times of why like optics are so important. Because even though we didn't feel like we were doing the best work in the world, we knew that the way we showed up and the way we executed was actually more important. And so people need to see that the work that we did, we actually cared about, and we need to present it in a way that actually matters. And I think a lot of people actually don't care about this enough. And this is why they don't get as many jobs or inquiries, because they think the job is just whatever, but this is actually a relationships game. And so if you're putting someone's work that you did with them on a pedestal, on your front page, on your Instagram, your portfolio, whatever it is, that's going to be the most valuable thing for them, because they see that you care. And a lot of people skip this step. But ultimately, for us, optics was the big thing. We were just putting everything everywhere on our socials. There was no direction or no intentionality to it. And so we started pushing stuff into like 3 squares, putting all the credits, making sure that everyone's seen, saying nice things about people, putting effort into our stories as well. All these things just kind of elevated us to a next place. And ultimately, we'll get into this into another episode, but like, that's how we actually started to raise our rates as well, because people started to care and we showed up the way we needed to show up, right? And even though to me the work back then was like mediocre, you're never gonna, creatives have a hard time loving their work.
Yeah.
For us, we just knew we needed to take those steps, unless or else we wouldn't continue going up.
Cool. All right, sick. And then I don't know when this video is coming out, but wrapping up 2024 and heading into like 2025, like, what do you see for yourself, for Tenfold? How do you see you guys like scaling up beyond what you are right now?
Yeah, the most exciting parts for us are the communities that we're building. They're a way for us to give back. Internally in the business is actually building out our teams a little bit bigger, having a little bit more direction, systems built out, processes. That's going to be a big priority for us as well. Everyone has a little bit more direction too individually, so we know where we want to take things. I want to focus a little bit more onto fashion, editorial stuff, for directing. I want to focus a little bit more on building out the world of Tenfold and what that looks like, where we're going. Justin wants to do a little bit more storytelling, a little bit more documentaries, a little bit more film focus. With Zach, he's kind of just like dialing in on what he wants to do in terms of like cinematography. We're always getting better on that side technically. So, Zach ends up being a lot more technical and really dialing in that process, because now we're having more directors fed into the system as well.
Yeah.
Which is great. It means that we can output more work as a team. And like, even for yourself, you're directing something next year, and putting people in those spaces and opportunities that like they can flourish and do something that they love as well. So, for us, it's always about working with good people. Like, that was always the main thing first. It's always about energy first. Like, we didn't really care if you were the most technically great person. There's a million great DPs and a million great directors out there. The people that we bring into our space are so important, because it's how we spend our time every day. It's how we interact with people. It's how we kind of learn and grow. And so we want to keep those people really close and like build them up. Loyalty is super huge for us. And so that's going to be the main thing. And even for Adrian, it's like dialing in on the business processes, everything. He's just finishing up some directing work as well. So it's a fun place to be in. I think it's also a growing phase for us as well, moving into a new space, but building out a little bit more of the Tenfold nation, as you would say. But it's fun because, this isn't something that we thought we'd be at this quickly. Things move quickly for us, but that's kind of like the biggest benefit, because we just take it in stride and we just keep pushing forward. We always find a way out, as long as things are always optimistic. And I think that's something that we try to keep into like the world of how we approach everything.
Cool.
And that's about where we're at now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jason. I think we'll wrap it up there. But if you guys have any more questions for Jason or anyone else on the team, or if there's any other subjects that you want us to cover, feel free to let us know. This was the Unfold podcast. Feel free to give us a follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.